New York, and on the new Hot 97 app. Ebro in the morning on Hot 97.
Ladies and gentlemen, you got it on Ebro in the morning with Laura Stiles and Rosenberg. And we are honored to welcome Sam Pollard. He has currently put together HBO's Atlanta's Missing and Murdered: The Lost Children. It's a 5-part documentary series. I just learned about Atlanta's Missing and Murdered last year. Was it last year, Laura?
Yeah. And so did I, because one of my girlfriends got really into the podcast. And she was giving me details about the story. I was able to watch the first episode yesterday. And
Sam,
being mad is an understatement.
Yeah, no, people were very upset. Sam, walk us through how you got involved in creating this documentary.
Well, back in 2017, I had finished another documentary about Maynard Jackson, the first Black mayor of a major southern city. And when I was doing that doc, I did a little section about the Atlanta child murders. And the company that helped produce this series, Show of Force, they thought it might be something to look at in a deeper and a more investigative way. So they put together a big, huge proposal that we pitched to HBO, because we've all had worked with HBO before. I had worked with HBO with Spike on Four Little Girls and When the Levees Broke.
Okay.
And HBO, gave us a green light, and we started shooting back in February of 2019. And we spent like 7 months going to Atlanta every month for a week and shooting into lots of the interviews you saw in the first episode. And we finished it just about 4 or 5 weeks ago. So it was a long and difficult and tremendous journey. And I think the thing that's really compelling about it is listening to the mothers and the siblings of the victims, and how painful it is for them to relive such a horrific time in their lives.
Well, not only that, but Sam, the way you frame in episode 1, the way the episode starts, it feels like not only do you talk about the first Black mayor of a major city, Mayor Maynard, but you also talk about KKK, racism, Confederacy in Georgia, and how Atlanta, this city of kind of middle-class working Black folks, was like this beacon of change and hope for Black folks. And how and what I took from it was how these murders in some way reminded Black folks that they were still under attack.
That's exactly right. It's it's basically saying no matter how far we had arrived, and we were climbing certain ladders in terms of class and the economics, we're still Black in America. And being Black in America, as we all know, back then, even before then, even today, can be a difficult road to follow. And,
well, look, even with COVID-19, and we're watching the race numbers and unfold, and we are dying at a higher percentage than everyone else due to racism and the history of racism in this country.
Exactly. So, that's why we felt it was important not to just look at the murders themselves, but look at the context of the whole city and the community and what we were struggling with. And this is what led to what happened in that 2-year period in the city of Atlanta, which was tremendously painful and intense for the city of Atlanta, not only for the families and the victims, but for the Jackson administration. So it was a big challenge. And one of the things that was very important that happened, surprisingly, was when we were down there after about a month of shooting. That's when the mayor decided to reopen the cases, which was like, you can't ask for, as filmmakers, you can't ask for a better thing to happen, for the mayor to have a press conference.
I was just going to ask you how amazing it must be to get Mayor Bottoms involved in this.
It was amazing. I mean, all of a sudden we heard that the mayor was going to have a press conference. We got a crew together. We rushed him down to City Hall. And then she announced the reopening, and then she gave us 2 interviews, in the next 2 or 3 months. So this was.
And she lived through this. She's 50? She got to be 50 years old?
Yeah, she was a little, I guess, 8 or 9 years old at the time when it happened. So she definitely lived through it, and she understood the pain that these families went through. So it was a really important thing to happen for this series and the films.
So you worked on When the Levees Broke, Four Little Girls. You worked on this story.
Mm-hmm.
The story that appears to be happening in front of us right now in terms of COVID-19 may be another one of those stories, at least in terms when you think of When the Levees Broke, of people of color being disproportionately affected. I'm just curious, from someone who's been watching these stories in America for so long, what do you take from what we're seeing right now and these disproportionate numbers?
This is what I take away from that, from all that I see around me, is that, that we live in a world where America is a complicated place where the issues of race and class have stayed at the forefront of our history, and they never seem to go away. And the challenge is to sort of figure out how to figure out how to live through all this stuff as Americans, as African Americans, as people of color. And it saddens me that I'm at a certain age in my life that I'm still living through so much horrific stuff. I thought that when I was a teenager in the '60s, going through the civil rights movement, being around when Malcolm X was alive and before when he was assassinated, that things would be changing in America. But sadly, things don't change that much in America, and I try to be optimistic and hope that things will. But we live in a world, we live with certain administrations where they don't do justice to people at all.
You don't have to mince words here, sir. You don't have go off, say what you want to say, sir, and I'll be right behind you.
Okay.
Did you think, given your life experience, how old are you, Sam, if you don't mind my asking?
I turned 70 last week.
Happy birthday, Sam. So,
bravo.
As a 70-year-old black man in America, did you think when President Obama won the election that maybe we were seeing some sort of turn? Did you ever imagine that the response to that would be a real reminder of who we still are as a country?
I thought, first of all, initially I was like pessimistic. I said, well, I'm not sure he could win. Then when I realized he could win, I said, wow, this is major, because I never thought this would happen in America. But then understanding the backlash, the roaches coming out of the corners, coming out of the dark when he was in his presidency, realizes that there's a deep-seated racism in America that's never going to go away, and it's just sad to see that, that with this man even in office, and this being such a revolutionary act, that people in the world who think, in this country who thought this is horrible for America. How could America have a black president? So again, you think things are going to change, and you hope things are going to change, and it does. Things do change, but they're always so incremental in this country. So
you go up, and then you go down farther, and then you maybe
exactly.
go up a little bit.
Exactly.
Which brings me back to the Atlanta's Missing and Murdered, The Lost Children, which everybody should check out on HBO. Episode 1 is up, and episode 2 is out this Sunday at 8 o'clock. Mm-hmm. Because similarly, Atlanta got their first black mayor, Mayor Maynard.
Right.
And he was making sure that black contracts and black businesses and black schools. And that was a part of his campaign, was to revive the black economy in Atlanta and help black folks really move up economically, mm-hmm. right, in Atlanta. And obviously, I didn't listen to the podcast, so I don't know how this story plays out. Plus, the new element of the murder cases being reopened. Do we know how that's played out yet?
No, they're still working on it. I mean, in all honesty, I think that they'll never ever really find out who the actual killer was, because I don't believe personally that Wayne Williams is the killer. Or maybe if he was, he had accomplices. I don't think they'll ever find out who it really was. I don't think he'll ever release him from prison. I think the best that the Keisha Lance Bottoms administration can do is to give the families a sense of, we respect the fact that you struggled, you had all these horrific things happen to you, and the city is going to recognize that by some kind of memorial.
But I guess my question is, or my assertion here is, similarly, the backlash was racial in Atlanta when they got their first black mayor.
Sure. So I'm not sure what the question is.
Do you think that is that what plays out in this documentary?
Oh, no. I think what's going to play out some very interesting things. There's going to be some revelations that no one has really sort of dealt with in the last 40 years that you're going to see. You're going to your eyebrows are going to be raised by the time you get to episode 5.
Got it.
Because I was very curious with your research and putting together, because obviously you got back when it happened, it was very limited ways of finding out information. They didn't have the technology that we have today or the knowledge, but I'm sure you guys put together numerous amount of information that wasn't clarified back then.
You hit it right on the head, Laura. There's going to be some revelations and some reveals that's going to knock your socks off. By the time you get to episode 5, you're going to say, how in the world did they have any sense that they could convict this man? You know, when you see the evidence that's going to come out by the time we get to episode 5.
Did people who grew up around that time, the age of the mayor and younger even, you know, down to the 40s, you know, years old right now or mid 30s, did everyone grow up with sort of this boogeyman that existed and parents saying you need to be careful and not get left alone because this existed? And if that did happen, did it exist among white people too, or was it exclusively sort of a black mentality in Atlanta?
I think in the city of Atlanta, it was not only black kids, black families who thought there was a boogeyman out there, but there were some white families who thought that in the city of Atlanta.
Okay.
Outside of the city of Atlanta, you know, there are young black people who I know who are older now, who back then remember they lived in New Jersey, or they lived in Philly, or they lived in Alabama. They all knew about the Atlanta child murders, and their parents were telling them, you know, you can't be out on the streets alone. So it was something that was a national story, an international story.
And Sam, when you were younger, was the tone of the story racial at all?
Yeah, it was. I was 20, I guess I was 28, 29. Sure, it was racial when I was that age, sure.
And so people assumed at that time that it was somebody white killing these kids.
Absolutely. It was somebody who was, you know, this is the South. It was maybe somebody from the Klan, you know, some white rights group that was doing this. That was the attitude, you know. And I come from a family my family was from both Mississippi and Georgia, and that's what I heard from my family, you know, back then.
Yeah, because the episode, when everybody watches on HBO, definitely opens up, and someone in the episode, I forget who, says, you know, black folks knew it was someone white, because if it was someone black, somebody would have known somebody who knew somebody.
Right.
Yeah, that's what Anthony Terrell says, because he couldn't believe that a white person could come in the neighborhood. A black person would do it and people would know who it was. That's exactly right. I mean, there's all different types of theories. I mean, as you saw in that first episode, there's many theories. And by the time you get to episode 2, this coming Sunday, there'll be another theory that gets dug into. So there's lots going on in this series. I mean, that's what we felt was important, not to just look at just the, you know, was it Wayne Williams? Because most of these docs that look at the Atlanta child murder just focus on Wayne Williams. We decided we were going to go deeper, and we did.
Atlanta's Missing and Murdered, The Lost Children, a 5-part documentary on HBO. This is Sam Pollard. It has been a pleasure to talk to you today.
My
pleasure to meet you and learn about your other work that you've also done. And thank you for doing that work.
Thank you very much. Everyone stay safe.
Stay safe, stay inside.
Yeah, you too, Sam. Thank you, man.
Thank you so much, Sam Pollard.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you very much.